Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Liquid here. I've been playing video games since I was a kid, and I think games can teach us a lot of valuable life lessons. For example, Tetris teaches you that if you try to fit in, you'll just disappear. Did you know that the video game industry is worth $180 billion? This is larger than the movie and music industries combined. The game industry is continuing to grow at 11% a year, and anyone can invest in this lucrative market. In this video, I'll demonstrate 3 different ways you can invest in the video game industry. So if one strategy isn't working out for you, you can always switch. By the end of this video, you will have a better understanding of how you can participate in this fast-moving sector that is growing at double digits. The first way is to invest in individual companies that either produce games directly or provide a product or service in the industry. Some of the largest game publishers are Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, EA, Activision Blizzard, Tencent, Capcom, Sega, and Take-Two. This strategy requires security analysis, and you have to know which games currently in development will be popular when it's released. An alternative to this pure play strategy is to be agnostic towards individual gaming studios, and what you do instead is invest in services or platforms that support developers. These would include companies such as Nvidia or AMD, which makes chipsets for consoles and gaming PCs. You also have Apple, Google, Autodesk, Unity, C, and Amazon. These companies offer software and platforms for developers and the gaming community to thrive. Over the last decade, we have seen increasing popularity for online streaming, virtual reality, games as a service, and esports. All these new industry changes require new infrastructure, and that's an opportunity for businesses that specialize in the cloud. But buying individual companies sounds like a lot of work. Well, if you don't mind handing control over to someone else, the second way to invest in this industry is through a video game sector ETF. An exchange traded fund is basically a basket of individual companies, and it trades on an exchange just like a stock. This means you don't have to spend the time and effort to research which companies are the best. You have professional fund managers that will do the work for you. Just remember they will charge a small fee for their service. Two popular funds right now are the Global X Video Game and Esports ETF and the Van Eck Vectors Video Gaming and Esports ETF. There are minor differences between the two. The performance over time will likely be similar, so it will mostly boil down to your personal preferences for the underlying assets they hold. Like any investment, you have to do your own due diligence. Now, the third and final way to invest in video games is by collecting them. This is arguably the most difficult method, but also has the potential to be the most rewarding. Highly prized games can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars apiece. A factory sealed copy of Pokemon Red sold at auction for $84,000 in 2020. And this game isn't even hard to find. In fact, more than 30 million copies of the original Pokemon games were sold. But mint condition status is rare, and that's why it's highly coveted. Complete sets of game libraries can also be valuable too. In 2012, a 32-year-old sold his entire game collection for $1.2 million. I guess that means collecting video games could be a legitimate way to become financially independent? But unfortunately, it's not that simple. The value of most released games can't even keep up with inflation over time. So, how do you build a game collection that is actually profitable? Well, first, you need to have the patience of a saint. If you want to see outsized returns, you should plan to hold your games for at least 15 to 20 years minimum before selling them for a profit. Here's a chart showing the average price of games after they're released. A typical game will drop in price for a few years after it hits store shelves. It will reach a low and gradually go back up after about 5 years or so. As games get older, the sample size gets smaller, meaning fewer units are being traded. That's why the older games tend to be more volatile. But every game is different. Some titles may never fall in price, while others may never get back to their original MSRP. So, the second thing you have to do is to seek out games that have high organic collectability. Every once in a while, a blockbuster game will come out, but it's often the lesser known titles that have the most potential to grow in value. Similar to how you can break down stocks by their factors, video games have factors as well. For example, some genres will hold their value better than others. Role playing games tend to perform the best in this case, while sports games lose value the quickest. Another factor is the game's developer. For example, the company Atlas is a subsidiary of Sega, and the studio isn't particularly big, but their games are notorious for having a low number of prints. So if you want to play an Atlas game, it's better to buy it sooner rather than later, since their older games are just really hard to find. But it's actually that rarity that makes so many of their games worth collecting. And of course, the nostalgia factor is a big one too. Games that have either a captivating story, groundbreaking gameplay, or memorable characters tend to appreciate a lot in value. When you experience a masterpiece that you can truly be immersed in, you will develop fond memories for that game, and that sentimentality will stay with you even when decades have gone by. So let's look at some games from my own collection. This should help explain how I evaluate games for collecting purposes. Here's the first one: Final Fantasy Adventure for the Game Boy by Square. This is a classic JRPG and a spin off of the Final Fantasy franchise. I found this used game on Craigslist in 2009. This guy was getting rid of his old games because he was moving, and I picked this up for just $20. I don't know if the seller understood the significance of this game, but it's actually the first title in the Mana series, which would go on to become another popular role playing franchise on its own. Let's take a look at the inside here. We have the consumer information booklet, a brochure for Nintendo Power magazine. This was, of course, the popular monthly magazine subscription that Nintendo offered at the time. And you don't see a lot of this anymore, but older adventuring games like this came with a physical map to help you out in your travels. So that's pretty neat. And of course, you have the game instructions, which matches the box art. You can see they're using some old school font. Some of the images are just screen captures, probably from a dev kit. And then you have the game itself. It comes in a protective plastic case, and this is what the cartridge looks like. Most Game Boy cartridges like this will only have like a few hundred kilobytes of data, which is like nothing by today's standards. Can you imagine like telling someone in 1991 when this game was first released that 30 years in the future you will have storage devices the size of your thumb that can store 1 terabyte of data? That's going to be very hard for people to believe. They probably thought we would see flying cars before developing such high capacity storage. So everyone knows technology grows quickly. It's just hard to predict in which direction. So, video games can represent kind of like a snapshot in time to show people later on how technology used to look. And that's why older games, especially well known brands like this one, can sell for $100 today, even if it's not in the best condition. But you don't have to go for really old games. Even titles that came out in the 2010s can be valuable today. So, this next one here, Persona 3 Portable, is a role playing game from Atlas. 40 positive reviews out of 40 on the review aggregator Metacritic. It's ranked as the best game of 2010 for the PSP platform. It was also highly discussed and shared, as many Atlas games tend to do. So this means that it was very popular. Persona 3 Portable only sold, I think, fewer than 250,000 copies. So knowing that this was a very collectible game, I bought this copy in 2011 for $30. And today, a brand new copy like this goes for about $200. So this game has aged very well. But the role playing genre doesn't have a monopoly on collectability. Any game can be worth a lot if there's a strong market demand for it. For example, this is the first Klonoa game. It's a side scrolling platformer released in 1998 by Namco. The characters are incredibly likable, so you play as Klonoa, this anthropomorphic character, and along with some friends, you have to stop this evil spirit from turning the dream world into a world of nightmares. The ending is really satisfying, but it's also bittersweet, and it's definitely one of the more memorable games I've played on the PS1. I actually got this as a used copy 10 years ago for like $50 or something. And that's not cheap for a used game. But I'm a big fan of platforming games and I really wanted to play this. Plus, I know this would keep its value because it's a rare title. So if we take a look inside, we see a Namco pamphlet. This was before the Namco Bandai merger in 95, so you don't see the Bandai name here. The instruction booklet in black and white, and then you have the CD and a detailed render of Klonoa on the back of the case. Due to how rare this game is, a complete set like this currently sells for about $300 on eBay today. Fortunately, Klonoa is now a PS1 classic, so if you have a portable PlayStation device or a PlayStation 3 that still works, you can experience the full game for a very fair price. I think the game still holds up well today and is definitely worth at least one playthrough. And finally, this is Etrian Odyssey 3, The Drowned City. So, Etrian Odyssey is a dungeon crawling role playing franchise, and this is the third one in the series. The MSRP for this was just $30 when it launched in 2010, and they even threw in a free art book if you pre ordered it. Since this was developed by Atlas, I ordered mine as soon as I could. There was only something like 100,000 copies ever sold in America. The art book features art from the first three games, and it's absolutely amazing. You can see it's colorful, detailed, and very thorough. The lead character designer, Yuji Himukai, did a fantastic job of designing all the different characters and making them all consistent, but different in their own way. And only a handful of artists worked on this entire game. So all the characters, environments, props, weapons, things like that, all done with like 5 or 6 artists, which is quite impressive for a game of this scale. Since there weren't that many sold and they didn't make any reprints, a brand new game like this will probably go for about $150 online today, and that's without the art book. Now, I also have games that have not appreciated very well over time, but game collecting is very nuanced, so it depends on what you're collecting them for. If you only want a highly valuable game, the criteria you apply will be different than for if you just want to collect a game for collecting sakes. For example, I have Halo 4 limited edition here. This game was developed in Redmond, Washington by 343 Industries and was packaged and assembled in Puerto Rico. You can see it has a very neat sci fi themed box design. Every copy has a unique serial number based on the order they came off the assembly line. On the back here, you can see it comes with a steelbook, a poster, and some other digital content. So I almost didn't buy this. It retailed for $100 initially, but I saw it on sale for $60 at a local pharmacy, of all places. Historically, first person shooters don't appreciate much in value, but the graphic looked amazing, and I've already played the first 3 Halo games, so I was curious about how the plot was going to continue. I figured I would probably end up playing this someday anyway, so might as well get it now. This was around 2015. And this other one, Ori and the Blind Forest, by Moon Studios, based in Vienna, Austria. This is the definitive edition, which comes with new areas to explore and abilities. This one here is unopened, but I have another copy of the game, which I played through. I was very impressed by how much they were able to do with the Unity game engine, and the art is incredibly mesmerizing. The music is top notch as well, so it's just a wonderful experience all around. And at $25 when I bought this 5 years ago, it was pretty good value. So I wanted to collect this game mainly as a piece of artwork and also to support the developer. So the thing is, I don't expect these two titles to appreciate in value as much as my other games. 10 years from now, maybe these will be worth more. It's hard to say, but it's not something that I'm counting on. I could always give these away as gifts, I could donate them or just play them myself. So sometimes I collect games, but not for financial reasons. If you're curious about other games in my collection, there's a link in the video description to my blog post where I have photos of other titles, including my recent purchase of the direct sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest. So there you have it, 3 different ways you can invest in the video game industry. You can buy video game stocks, you can hold game sector funds, or collect physical copies of game products and even game-related memorabilia. Anyway, I hope you found this video entertaining. Thanks a lot for watching all the way to the end. I wish you all happy investing, and until next time.